So at the end of the day, I truly believe to combat systems, to truly thrive, there has to be connection. And true connection, in my mind, is an act of resistance.
Mm.
It truly is.
Hi, I'm Debra, an executive coach, consultant, and the founder of Debra. After years of leading in education, often in spaces not built for me, I now support others doing the same, especially women of color who are leading, healing, building, and figuring it out as they go. This is with Debra, real talk about legacy, leadership, healing, and courage to lead without shrinking. You are all navigating so much, and you're still showing up. This space is here to remind you that we're already enough. Anybody that knows me knows that I love leadership. I love learning. I love talking about it. I think of leadership like a deep connection to others, in relationship with others. So we're working towards this goal together. And how do you motivate people? How do you tap into their core? I often say it's looking at their heart. So I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation with somebody that I recently met. I had heard about this thing that he does. He leads from the heart. He created this concept that he uses with his staff. It's called the helper story. And so I thought, I want to know more. And that is why I reached out to Dr. Jonathan Grady to have a conversation with me today. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's a nationally recognized scholar, speaker, and leader whose work challenges us to rethink how we show up for others and ourselves. Dr. Grady is a creator of the Helper Story, a framework that gives language to the emotional and spiritual cost of being a constant service of others, particularly those of us carrying multiple marginalized identities. Today, we're going to talk about trauma, survival, and what it means to lead with love in systems not built for our full humanity, and what happens when love turns inward. This episode is not just a conversation, it's really, I think, a call in. So let's get into it. All right. The famous Dr. Grady. And why are you famous? Because my wife talks about you all the time. She had told me just like how kind you are, how intentional you are about your leadership, how welcoming you are, and way that you have in creating safety for people as a leader. And these are not things that you often hear about senior managers, senior leaders. You don't know, I hear people describe them as that. I don't know in my career that I have had the opportunity to describe somebody like that or have somebody like that in my life. So I'm glad that she has that. And I'm glad to finally have a chance to really talk to you today. She also told me about the helper's story. I remember her telling a group of friends, and it just made my neck snap. I'm like, wait, what? What did you say? What is that? So I'm really excited to talk to you today. But before we get started, how's your heart?
Yes, my heart remains hopeful. When
Mm.
I think about this year for me has been a lot like many in this world and society. And each day that I have breath in my body, I am really reflecting on and thinking about what does it mean to still remain hopeful. So today and always, and definitely for this year, my heart is hopeful.
Mhm, mhm. Is it ever heavy because you wear this like leadership crown and you have to maybe feel like you have to give hope to others?
It does feel heavy, a lot because you carry the stories, the fears, the worries, the tears of others. And at the same time, you're trying to balance your own sense of worry, concerns, uncertainty. So the both and is at times difficult, but I'm often reminded of my ancestors who fought, who endured so that I could stand here today, be here today. And it is their fight that keeps me going. I am often reminded of the small wins, the small victories when I'm with my community. with the village, I'm reminded that I'm surrounded by a community of people who have an array of strengths, of dreams and aspirations. And all of that gives me hope, keeps me from throwing up my hands, surrendering.
I love that. So in my intro, I say I don't often get to talk about leadership, but I love talking about leadership.
Hmm.
Um, I believe leadership is an energy exchange and that you're a relationship with people. And I love to like really talk about it as not as a concept, but as a way to connect heart to heart
Yes.
if we're really like driving towards the same thing. And, we both work in education. So my heart is connected to you because you're helping population that I want to really instill hope into and pour into so they can really like actualize their dreams
Mhm.
or trigger a dream because they never did before and play a part in that, right? So I'm excited to talk to you today. Particularly, I'd love to talk about the helper story and how did you develop it? Why did you develop it? How does it live? I know it's yours, but I'd love for you to just share because I think it's fabulous.
I appreciate that. Yeah, when I think about my life and my journey and story thus far, I'm often reminded that I have been surrounded by caretakers. I've been surrounded by people who gave their all in support of other people, whether it was my grandmother that sacrificed so much for her children, whether it was my mother, that when my grandmother got older and was dealing with medical ailments, stepped into that role, retired early, when it was my uncle who got diagnosed with prostate cancer. My mother stepped in and served as a caretaker to when my dad got diagnosed with brain cancer. My mother stepped in as a caretaker. So, this notion of taking care of others, helping others, I've always been surrounded by that. And in addition, my father, who was a janitor, so I grew up in Carson, California, working class family, but I like to say that I was extremely rich, rich in love.
Hmm.
That was the first time that when I looked around my community, we didn't have the fanciest clothes and cars, but you know what? I knew that my family loved me. They would work and work and work and work to ensure that I had everything that I needed, not only to just survive, but to thrive. They poured into me love, affirmations. They told me not only was I intelligent, but that I was handsome and that I was powerful. And at the same time, I also saw my father work and work and work and work to his last breath, cancer and all, to ensure that his family had everything that they needed. So, this notion of being in service of other people, being in support of other people was a constant theme in my life that I then adopted. And while I truly believe working in education in the power of helping other people, I also then took on that same mentality of work, 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 give, give, give. And then if I layer onto that this notion of systems, whether it's capitalism, whether it's white supremacy, dot, 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 I then have started to recognize, huh, I have been told my entire life that my value lies in my ability to stretch, to serve, to endure without any pause. And it got to a point in my life where my own health came to a head. And doctors telling me, Jonathan, you have to make some different life changes, or the work is going to kill you.
Mhm.
One of the last things that my father said to me before he passed away from brain cancer was, Jonathan, I know that you're always going to be successful. There is a fight in you that is unrelentless. There is a love that you have for people and for humanity. And my hope for you, my prayer for you, is that you learn how to truly live and embrace life, that you stop putting off the vacations to next year, that you stop making excuses for taking time to pause, that your being in service of other people is in turn harming you.
Hmm.
And I don't want you to get to the end of your journey, whenever that is, and to have regrets. So it was in that moment, my losing my dad, that I like to say was in part a rebirth, because it was really the first time that I was forced to that. And in terms of doctors telling me my own health, that if I keep going like this, I mean, it's not sustainable. But in a larger picture, it's unjust. It's not loving to myself. So I had to start to say, I need to think through a new framework, because I want to continue to love, to continue to help, to continue to be there for people. But I can't do that to the best of my ability if I'm not also loving and caring and helping myself. And I recognize, like many theorists, that is not easy, one, but the system and society does not tell us it is okay to rest. And I never saw those examples modeled in my life. So the helper's story was birthed from lived experience, was birthed from society telling me again that it is not okay to rest. So that is how I came up with the concept that is really in four parts.
Wow.
You're listening to the Do Better with Debra podcast with guest social justice educator, scholar, and author, Dr. Jonathan R. Grady. Make sure to visit dobetterexecutivecoaching.com and learn how you can lean into your power and lead with confidence, purpose, and joy. And now back to the podcast.
When you were talking about your dad, I had a different experience with my mom when she was passing away. We didn't have those deep conversations. She was very like in her silence, in deep thoughts. She told me about 3 weeks before she passed away that she always wanted to go to Hawaii. She always wanted to go to London. And so for me to make meaning of that is like, when I'm taking my last breath, I don't want anybody to say Deborah always wanted to whatever,
Yes.
right? Prior to that, I would be to work at 6:30 and work and work and work and work and work. No breaks, right? Trying to save the institution from whatever I thought I was saving the institution was, trying to prove my worth with my time and my energy, and not taking any vacations and not taking any time and not doing the things outside that I really wanted to really lean into, because I think nobody told me that I could do something different.
Yes.
So what you're saying to me really resonates. I think you have that conversation with your dad.
Mm.
I just watched my mom have a silent conversation with herself and had to make meaning of it. So tell me, how do you teach others?
Yes. I think for me, it does go back to that piece of, what does a thriving life look like for you at
Mm,
the end of your journey? What do you want your legacy to be?
okay.
If your life ended today, would you feel fulfilled?
Mm,
Would you feel at peace? And if the answer to any of those questions is no, then how do you use this moment while you still have breath in your body to make some changes, to think about reprioritizing things that are important to you? But again, as I start to think about that first piece of it, it's the awareness. If you haven't had the modeling of it is okay to choose you for once, you have to first have that awareness. So as I think about my own leadership, as I think about my own engagement with other people, it always begins with this notion of who are you today? Because who I was yesterday and 5 years ago, what I prioritize, what I value is very different than the person that I am today. It's not easy, but I've had to reprioritize things and choose some different actions. That is how I begin to help folks understand, make sense of, and start to articulate what does joy and a thriving life look like. But it does require truth telling, right? To be able to say, I have not chosen me. And it does take boundary setting and sacrifice and courage to be able to say, you know what? No, it is. It is important for my own livelihood to be selfish. We're not taught to be selfish. The systems that we live in and have to navigate thrives and profits off of our disconnection. And not only our disconnection with others, but these systems profit off of our disconnection with ourselves. And it is not accidental. It is what systems rely on. So at the end of the day, I truly believe to combat systems, to truly thrive, there has to be connection. And true connection, in my mind, is an act of resistance.
Mm.
It truly is. So I always invite people. I say, you got to start with yourself. If one is familiar with the cultural humility framework, cultural humility says it starts with yourself. Who are you? How do you use each moment as a homecoming back to yourself to figure out what do you need today?
Mm.
The next part of this notion of cultural humility says, how do you connect with other people openly, with curiosity, without judgment? How do you learn about others? In the workplace, I always say, we all carry so many things with us to work every day. And we still show up, we still smile, we do the best that we can. But behind the exterior lies so many stories, so many emotions that if you don't know who I am and I don't know who you are, what I value, what you value, we will never be able to have a thriving environment, a work environment, a thriving life. So it does require vulnerability. It requires the ability to truly be open, to connect with people. And it is, I feel, my responsibility as a leader to cultivate those spaces and an environment where my team feels as though it is okay to show up in your true humanity. It is okay to show up some days and to say, ooh, I don't have it in me. I can only do 1, 2, and 3. How do we support one another? That is what I have control over. And that's the other piece of this. In this life and in this world, it is so easy to focus on what you don't have. But the hope that I started with, that I said, how is my heart? My heart remains hopeful. That hope also comes in the belief that there is a lot within my control, regardless of title, regardless of degrees, there is a lot within my control. So if I can focus on things that I can control and I can silence the noise of things that I cannot, then again, there's hope in that. There's tangible things and progress that I can track because I have control of those things.
How have you seen yourself change since you have embodied this framework?
Absolutely. I've seen myself become more patient.
Yeah.
I've seen myself become more understanding. I've seen myself become more curious. And I've seen myself become truly more loving. My entire life has been go, 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 go. I get this title, I'm on to the next. I get this degree, I'm on to the next. I need to do this, I need to reach this benchmark. There was no sense of patience. There was no sense of pause. There was no sense of taking time to even reflect and make meaning of things. So this has taught me, one, to be more patient, to slow down. This notion of it has taught me to be more understanding. If I say that I love, if I say that I genuinely want to see my people thrive, then that also means I need to have that understanding and grace that not everyone shares the same beliefs and perspectives that I share. And it has challenged me to approach every situation from a place of curiosity versus a place of judgment. It's seeing every moment as a learning moment. I don't have to agree with you, and you don't have to agree with me. But how can we sit down and see the humanity in others? So that is something also that it has taught me. And then in terms of the other pieces around curiosity, in terms of love, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on different frameworks and definitions around what is love from a spiritual framework, from an academic framework, from a well being framework, and all of the frameworks from love is patient and love is kind to bell hooks talking about love as an action, not just something we feel, right? To love as this notion of courage, to even this notion of love as understanding. But my favorite quote, I love James Baldwin. I carry James Baldwin with me every day. But James Baldwin has this quote around love as being able to take off the mask that we fear and that cannot live without, and that we know we that cannot live within. That if we center love in our lives, fear, the unknown, it can truly lead us to a path of liberation. And when you start to share those lessons learned with other people, that also is a part of love. Because another definition of love is the ability to tell the truth.
I think what you're doing, though, what you're creating is a loving, healing space. Because when people feel they made a mistake or they not done something in the way that leadership wants, there is such fear that they're going to get in trouble because of what's happened before in other spaces. You are creating a space where healing can happen, where you're redirecting or reimagining how we are in leadership together. And that is love. And that is powerful because I often say to my staff or people that I'm leading when they're like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm like, I'm not your parents. You can't get in trouble. We tried, it didn't work. So therefore we have to go a different direction. Or you didn't have all the information that you needed to make the best decision to go this way, or you didn't get the right people involved. There's so many lessons, like you're saying, that we can take away from it, that reducing the pylon of harm or the way the system reacts to mistakes is giant, giant way of showing love.
Yes, I agree. And I love the word that you mentioned, togetherness, together. I truly believe if we're a team, we're in this together. We all have different strengths. We have different abilities. We have different perspectives. We have different beliefs. I would never want to work on a team where everyone had the same strengths, vision, and perspective.
Agreed.
We have to be able to together co-create, learn from one another, uplift one another when needed, and also hold one another accountable. Love also is about accountability. So it is the ability to also be able to tell folks, for some, maybe this is not the place for you at this point, or this role is not in alignment with your strengths. So let's talk through some other options. And that's okay.
You are listening to the Do Better with Debra podcast with Dr. Debra Y. Griffith and her very special guest, Senior Associate Vice President of Equity and Belonging at California State Polytechnic University, Pomona, Dr. Jonathan R. Grady. Stay tuned till the end of the podcast for more information on how you can contact Dr. Grady. And now, back to the podcast.
How does that helper's journey or helper's story, why do we need it more today than ever?
Yes.
So in the beginning, I asked you how your heart is.
Yes.
As my almost final question, why do we need it even more today?
We as a society are more divided than I can remember in my lifetime. People are living each day in fear. People are steeped in grief. And people are afraid to speak their truth, whatever that truth is, without fear of being persecuted, shamed. So as I think about this notion of the helper story, as I think about this notion of love and grace and storytelling, this is beyond politics. This is beyond education. This is beyond so many things. This is about how do we live a life where we can truly see and believe in the humanity of other people. So if we do not pause for a second to say, what do I need? If we do not reclaim our own peace and time, we are not going to make it. So I invite everyone to take time to really think about, again, the framework. Emily Zhao has this framework. It talks about one, how do I first reconnect with myself? How do I connect with the community? How can I reconnect with earth and spirit? And how do I reconnect with my root? Now more than ever, we have to reconnect with one another. It's the foundation for everything. And if we do not, it is clear the repercussions. Our bodies will not be able to make it through.
Where are you finding joy?
I'm finding joy at this part in my life in the more simple things. Find joy walking down the street and just seeing the leaves move. I'm finding joy in basking in the sun. I'm finding joy around my village and my community. But I'm finding the most joy in these days in silence, in peace with myself. And that has not always been easy because to sit in peace and quiet and stillness with yourself, whew, if you haven't been doing the work on yourself, that could be very scary. But for me, in doing the work, to sit with myself and just exhale has been a godsend and a blessing. So every day, there is something that I say, you know what, I am just so grateful. And I have to mention this as an act or a practice as part of that larger framework. Small things that we can do. For me, and every day that I wake up, I start the day with what is something that I'm looking forward to. And then at the end of each day before I go to sleep, I also take a moment in solitude and silence to say, what is something that I am grateful for the day? That has brought me so much joy.
Thank you for that. Last question. What will your legacy be?
What will my legacy be? That's a question that I am still trying to answer. You know, I could say, oh, I want to inspire people, that I've lived a life of impact, that I've inspired others, that people will remember not just what I said, but how I made them feel.
I think it's that. I do think it's that.
I appreciate that because I think yeah, I've struggled to answer that question, but I appreciate the naming of that. And I continue to reflect on that. But it is that notion of if I had to say more to that piece, yes, how I make people feel.
And listen for it because it's already happened.
Mm. I appreciate that because, again, going back to some of this, I don't think I've taken enough time to pause to actually listen to the impact, to the words of how I've made people feel.
Or their facial expressions when they're
Mm.
talking to you and their body language, right? Are they at ease? Do they feel open? Can they be vulnerable?
Yes.
Do you make them smile? Do you
Mm.
make them feel seen and heard? Oftentimes we use this as how we want to make our students feel. The
Yes.
higher up you go, the further you get away from the students, right? When you're all around adults all the time, they just still want the same thing.
I receive that. I really do. Right. I receive it. Words of affirmation is not my love language, and I like to receive, but I am learning in my journey to sit and take in the love. So I receive that. Thank you.
For sure.
Take care.
And now, Dr. Debra has invited Dr. Grady back to continue their discussion and further explore his Helper's Journey framework. Enjoy.
How do you put this into action? Like, what are the practices? How does the framework work with your team? Or maybe whatever it is that you want to share and how you use it at CPP.
So it is a 4-part framework. The first starting with begin within. So the story starts with yourself. So before you can pour into others, you must honor yourself. How are you tending to your own well being? How are you granting yourself the radical permission to prioritize your needs, even when the world expects you to put yourself last? And for helpers, for caretakers, it's the reminder that this is not indulgence, it is a revolutionary act of self preservation. So, within this first part of the framework, the foundation, what does this look like in practice? For me, it's important to start a meeting with a reflective question that I would send to my team prior to. So when they have time to self-reflect on a question, and then we talk about it as a group. An example of that could be, what is something that is bringing you joy in the present moment? So give the team that question prior to, they can self-reflect. That's the beginning within. And then as a group, we talk about, what does joy look like in this moment? Can we support one another? The second part of the framework is around making meaning. It is the recognition that your journey is not static, that it is unfolding. It's the recognition that each experience, triumph, and even setbacks offer an invitation to reflect and grow. How are you making meaning of your priorities, your identities, your life direction? What lessons do you carry from the heartbreaks, the pauses, the failures, and the seasons of becoming? And it's also the understanding that reflection transforms struggle into wisdom and wisdom into deeper compassion. So, what does this look like within leadership? It is really creating what I call a mistake resilient zone. It's cultivating environments and within teams where even failures are seen as wins. If we're able to pause, reflect, and make meaning of the experience and to use it for good. Maybe it's we're not going to try that again, or maybe it's not right now,
Yeah.
but there's still a win, a victory, something to celebrate even in failure. The third part of the framework is around embodying action. Caring for others requires action and intention, but also caring for yourself requires action and intention. So this part is really about what practices, boundaries, and rituals can you weave into your life to sustain your spirit? How can you reclaim the courage to say no when needed so your yes remains authentic and aligned? And it's the recognition that action is where self awareness becomes self honoring and where vision becomes lived reality. I work with my team around what does it mean to say no? If you can identify your priorities, then how do you stick to that and align everything you do to your priorities for a semester, for a year, for a season? And anything that is not in alignment with those priorities, how do you say no? And it may not be a permanent no. It may be a no for the time being. We can consider it in the future. And the last part of the framework is around transformation. It's about celebrating self. The helper story is not complete without joy. How are you holding yourselves accountable to living a life that feels whole and fulfilling is something that I pose to my team all the time. What does success look like? Not as the world defines it, not even how I define it, but as the individual defines it. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And it's the recognition that celebration is not just for milestones, it is for the quiet victories, the moments of resilience, and the daily choice to honor yourself as much as you honor others. And again, what does that look like in practice? Once we're able to understand what success looks like, not only from a team perspective, but from an individual perspective, we can also begin to talk about how do you like to receive recognition and praise? One might reference the love languages. We've done that exercise as a team, and I do that with different organizations around what does it mean to receive praise and recognition, and how then, once we know how one likes to receive recognition, how can we then engage in those modalities to celebrate not only others, but then how do you utilize those modalities to celebrate yourself?
Hmm. So I have one question for you. Because what's sitting with me is when you began leadership and you were also being supervised, you were probably taught something completely different. You probably witnessed something completely different.
Yes.
A way of leading people that's probably rooted a lot in white supremacy in a
Yes.
sense. How long did it take you to reject that and adopt and slowly start to adopt this way of leading and loving and leading in with love in the center?
Yes. I think for me, absolutely, I was conditioned to lead in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
I could use the terms micromanage.
Mm-hmm.
I could use the terms, outcomes focused. If you don't meet the outcomes, it's punitive, right? I was conditioned to lead in that way. And what I then started to see is that morale was extremely low. People were leaving. I was spending more time, more resources, trying to rehire, reorient folks to an institution, an organization, a team, and it took away from the ultimate outcomes that I wanted to see. And we can all read a variety of books and leadership models and frameworks and things of that nature, but in the readings, in the frameworks, the soul was missing. The humanity was missing. And I recognize and I truly believe in saying names of people who have impacted me. And I will say the name of Dr. Barbara Avery, who was the vice president of student affairs at a prior institution. She was the first leader that I saw that truly led with love. And in leading with love, I started to question, this is a different leadership style that I have come to know, and I started to inquire, how did you come to this notion of leading with love? And she then taught me that if you want to retain people, if you want to ultimately meet your outcomes, you will never get there if people do not buy into the vision, if people aren't committed, if people aren't consulted, if people do not feel cared for, you'll never get there. So you
Mhm.
have a choice. Either you can continue to lead from a place where you have been conditioned, and in doing so, you will continue to be disconnected from your people. You will continue to spend time, energy, and resources in ways that could be going for good to the actual people.
Yeah.
Or you can make another choice and to always remember that true leadership is a reflection of one's own ability to see the humanity in others, to center dignity, to center grace, and to center courage into the work. And if you can learn how to do that keyword authentically, then you will have eventually ultimate success. So that is where I saw it. I saw it modeled. It was unlearning, a lot of unlearning that needed to happen. And then it became, well, how do I make this my own? Right? What does leading with love look like for me based on who I am, my passions, my interests, my heart, my values? So that is how I have come to recognizing not only the importance of it, but the importance of authenticity in this work.
Mhm. What is your name again?
Dr. Barbara Avery.
Well, you have become her for many. So, last time we talked about legacy. This is part of the ripple effects of your legacy, which is ripple of her, and now you're passing it on. And I think we'll end with that because we need more of that,
Yes.
and especially in the workplace.
Yes.
So thank you for all the love that you're dropping into the people, all the care you're dropping into them, and all the things that you're teaching them so they can carry on to their own staff.
Yes. I received that. And it is the hope. I call it a movement. It is the hope that what I'm pouring, the love I'm pouring into others, that they then will pour that love into their people and so on. And the more that people can understand the importance of this, I truly believe we can all be better. Right?
We must.
We
We
must
must.
be better.
We must. Awesome.
Thank you.
Whew. I mean, I feel that touched me deeply. Um, oftentimes when we talk about leadership, it is so like technical, but this one is grounded in pure heart, pure love, which is not words that we usually use to describe leadership. Dr. Grady gave us so much to sit with, a deep reminder of that love, real love is layered. That being in service to others without tending to ourselves is a road for burnout and betrayal and harm to ourselves, harm to our bodies. And that we don't just deserve care, it is actually required for us to lead well. If this conversation moved you, share it. Send it to someone who's always giving, someone who might need the reminder that their healing and leadership can coexist. Until next time, be well and keep doing better on purpose.
You've been listening to social justice educator, scholar, and author, Dr. Jonathan R. Grady. You can find Dr. Grady on Instagram, LinkedIn, or email him at jonathanrgrady@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show, leave a rating or review, and share with a friend or colleague. You can always find Do Better with Debra on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and coming soon to YouTube. Thank you for listening.